Good morning, and welcome to today's Atlantic Council event, Taiwan's Critical Role in Global Supply Chains and the Future of US-Taiwan Ties. It's an honor today to host Taiwan's Minister of Economic Affairs, Dr. Ming-Hsin, during his first official visit to the United States for this timely discussion. My name is Matthew Kranig, and I'm Vice President and Senior Director of the Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. Today's conversation comes at a critical time as geopolitical competition across the Indo-Pacific and beyond is reshaping global supply chains with profound national security implications. I look forward to a robust discussion today, including hearing Taiwan's views on the future of the US-Taiwan partnership and the role it can play in supporting US reindustrialization and shared economic opportunity. This is a particularly important topic and timely topic, considering that just yesterday, Taiwan and the United States signed a joint statement on the Pax Silica Declaration and US-Taiwan cooperation on economic security, endorsing principles of mutual prosperity, technological progress, and supply chain resilience. Meetings like this are central to the Scowcroft Center's mission of developing sustainable, nonpartisan strategies to address the most important security challenges facing the United States and its allies. We also honor General Brent Scowcroft's legacy of service and embody his ethos of nonpartisan commitment to the cause of security, support for U.S. leadership and cooperation with allies and partners, and dedication to the mentorship of the next generation of leaders. Special thanks to our friends at TechRo, who have been longtime partners supporting our Taiwan-related work, and we're particularly pleased today to see Ambassador Yu among other familiar faces. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador. Now it is my great privilege to introduce our featured speaker, Minister Kong. Minister Kong was named Taiwan's Minister of Economic Affairs in August 2025. As a former National Development Council Minister and Deputy Economy Minister, he is equipped with a wealth of experience to help guide Taiwan's trade, industry, and economy. Previously, Minister Kong served as the Minister without Portfolio in the Executive Yuan and as Vice President of the Taiwan Institute of Economic Research. During his time in Taiwan's think tank community, he helped to shape initiatives spanning traditional and high-tech policy development, including the 5+2 Innovation Industries Plan and Asia Silicon Valley Project. He has also championed smart machinery, green energy technology, circular economy, the national defense industry, biotechnology, and new agriculture. The address will be in Mandarin, so for those of you who will need a translation device here in person, we'll have staff coming around helping with that. But now, without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Minister Kong.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind introduction. It is my great honor to be here to share some of my thoughts with you. I'm going to share with you what I think that the role Taiwan is going to play in the next 1 to 2 decades, and my thoughts on Taiwan-US relations. Before I begin, I want to share with you the story about Taiwan, in particular what has happened in the past 10 years. And I want to talk about how Taiwan shows its resilience in the face of different challenges. If you look at this slide, you see that Taiwan is at a pivotal crossroads. In 2016, President Tsai Ing-wen took office, and that represents completely different policies led by a new party being in power. Previously, Taiwan signed ECFA or other agreements with China, so we shared closer relationship with China. And we hope that this economic growth of China can lead to spill effects in Taiwan. However, that spill effect was not as much as we expected. So you see that the economic growth rates back then was not very impressive. In 8 years, we only had about a little bit over 2% in our GDP growth rate. But after President Tsai took office, we have seen a major change. We wanted our economy to be decoupled by China. So just as I mentioned earlier, we have this 5+2 Innovation Industry Plan and our Asia Silicon Valley project. We want to be connected with Silicon Valley. We want to be connected to Boston in biotechnology industries, for instance. We want to work closely with Siemens in Europe or Mitsubishi in Japan in different sectors. And in terms of green energy, we want to work with European countries to drive its development. So you see, we started to develop all kinds of industry sectors. From 2016 to 2020, we were laying the foundation for such development. After 2020, you see that there was a major pickup in our economic growth. And we have seen the effects to be even more impressive as of today. Last year, our GDP growth rate was as high as over 7%. This was projected number. We believe the exact number will be close to 8%. If you look at our export, you see now we have over 640 million US dollars. 640 billion US dollars. And you see that the GDP per capita already exceeds that in Japan and Korea. And stock market right now is about 3,200 points. And the value has already exceeded Japan and Korea. We are ranked 8th in the world in terms of the stock market value. So our economy is performing quite well. And we also have major structural changes in our economy. If you look at the left-hand side, you see Taiwan's outbound investment. The red line represented our investment to China. In 2010, it peaked at over 10 billion US dollars. At that time, Taiwan signed ECFA with China, but this figure started to decline afterwards. And then we saw an even major drop after 2010. So now our export to China only accounts for less than 7%, so about 4 billion US dollars. As for our exports to other countries, you see that we are investing more in countries other than China. If you look at the number in the United States, number increased quite significantly after 2019. And it was also the time when we launched projects encouraging investment in the US. So if you look at these figures, before 2016, we were tied more closely with China, mainland China. But after 2016, we started to work more closely to countries around the world. So this is reflected in the numbers here. In the past, export to Hong Kong and mainland China accounted for 40%, but now it has dropped to only 26%. And the investment to the US has increased dramatically, and also because of the rise of AI. And you have seen a dramatic and significant changes. On this slide, I would like to share with you that we have gone through many different challenges in the past decade, and we can divide it into several stages. After 2016, after President Tsai took office, we had changes in our policies. And then after 2018, after President Trump took office, we had the first US-China trade war. And that led to the first relocation of the global supply chain. The impact was not that huge. So if it was about cybersecurity concern, then the manufacturing sites were relocated back to Taiwan or to Southeast Asian countries.
So if we look at the charts after 2016, even though there was the US-China trade war 1.0, the Taiwan economic growth rate recovered. And then starting in 2020, we faced COVID-19 related disruptions, and this was a huge challenge that disrupted global supply chains all over the world. But Taiwan had excellent COVID-19 protection measures, and so our orders were very high because we were not as disrupted as other areas. As a result, you can see that Taiwan had a very high growth rate during this time. Now, in the next stage, because of COVID-19, it did affect demand for electronic devices. It increased rapidly, increased demand for semiconductors as well. And because Taiwan has relatively comprehensive supply chains, its semiconductor orders increased as well. And this created some excellent development opportunities for semiconductors in Taiwan. Now, the third stage here is Trump tariffs 2.0 after Trump took office a second time. And here we can see that because Taiwan developed semiconductor industry, this was also good for future development. Thanks to semiconductor development, we think it bodes very well for future development. And so what we're quite certain of is that after 2025, in the context of tariffs and AI, Taiwan's economy will continue to show robust growth. Now, let's look at a few other very important issues so that we can better understand the role that Taiwan plays. Now, the first subject I would like to discuss is the age of AI. Has the age of AI truly arrived? If it has, then Taiwan's role in global supply chains will be even more important. Here we can see the situation with Taiwan's semiconductor development. Taiwan has really evolved from very simple semiconductors to very sophisticated and 5 nanometer semiconductor production, less than 5 nanometers, the most advanced semiconductors. And of course, the output value has also been increasing. So we can see that in 2013, it was over 63 billion. And then in 2017, it increased past 80 billion USD. So the value continues to increase. And then starting with the second term of President Tsai Ing-wen, it increased past 100 billion and reached 165 billion in 2024. And now in 2025, we have surpassed 200 billion. So I think very soon we will see the age of 250 billion or even 300 billion, because I believe that the age of AI has truly arrived. In the past, AI has played a very important role and continues to do so. It becomes increasingly obvious, not only when it comes to industrial development, but also when it comes to military and defense, agriculture. AI will continue to play a pivotal role. And that is why the US is investing such great resources in AI development. I think that in the future, international competition will be based on AI competitiveness between these different countries. Next, I would like to discuss ITCs. This is information provided by IDC. Now, if we compare growth with last year, it's 32% in 2026. But if we look at 2027, 2028, 2029, over the next 3 years, spending with growth will continue to increase. It'll increase past 30%. And in 2029, it will total 1.262 trillion, according to this projection. And this is very sophisticated AI systems. So I think that this means that AI hardware will develop, and Taiwan will play a very important role. Other countries will play a much weaker role compared with Taiwan. Now, since we are living in the age of AI, we can see that Taiwan's role is truly crucial. But the entire semiconductor and AI ecosystem sees that Taiwan is not the dominant player. Here we can see U.S. companies play a very important role. The greatest increase in leadership has been in NVIDIA among IC design companies. So it's over 130 billion USD. And then in terms of foundry companies, TSMC is number one at 90 billion USD. But if we look at equipment and materials, other IDM companies, for example, RAM manufacturers, which includes Samsung, Intel, Micron, we can see that the US is playing a leading role. Whether we're talking about IDM or equipment or IC design, the US has a comprehensive advantage. Now, when it comes to foundry companies, TSMC has a competitive edge. So I think in the next 5-10 years, we will see that the US, together with TSMC and Taiwan, should develop further cooperation so that they can contribute more to the entire world. Just now, I mentioned that Taiwan started ramping up investment in the US starting in 2016. And so we can look here to see investment not just in semiconductors, but in many other areas, including in machines. And also, this is a very diverse investment in terms of geographic portfolio as well. What we can say for sure is that there will be more investment in semiconductors and AI-related fields. Right now, many companies have already announced their investment amounts. If we look at semiconductors, this also includes supply chains with over 18 billion, $11.8 billion. And then there are AI-related ICT products, which has exceeded $8 billion. And if we look at the Taiwan-US Investment Treaty, we can see that there has been a commitment to 250 billion. So there needs to be a comprehensive supply chain, a comprehensive ecosystem. If you only have different parts of the supply chain, that's not enough. And that is why many American companies, including NVIDIA, AMD, Micron, they are continuing to invest in Taiwan. So they have invested almost $15 billion. But that's actually much lower than the actual amount. The actual amount should be much higher than this. And they're also investing in semiconductor supply chains, cloud, software services, etc. All of these areas are seeing increased investment in Taiwan. So US-Taiwan investment is increasing on both fronts, in both directions. So when we are sure that we're living in the age of AI, we can be sure that Taiwan will play a critical role in the near-term future. Taiwan's role is irreplaceable, and it's also working on global deployment. Under US leadership, we think that we can make a bigger contribution to all of humanity. Next, I would like to discuss another trend, which is non-red supply chains, the age of non-red supply chains and how these came about. The transfer of supply chains began as follows. Starting in 2018, there was the first wave of supply chain transfers. Some supply chains moved from China to Taiwan and to other Southeast Asian countries. The second wave happened during COVID-19. And now we are seeing the third transition, which involves large-scale investment in the United States. Now here I'm citing the example of semiconductors. The red arrows account for pre-2018 investment. So whether we're looking at Taiwan or other countries, most investment is flowing into China. But starting with the Trade War 1.0 in 2018, launched by President Trump, we can see the green arrow, which is post-2018. And so you can see more investment in Southeast Asia and the United States. And then the blue arrow, the blue-green arrow, is after 2025, which is under President Trump 2.0. And here, the thickest part of the arrow is pointing at the United States, signifying increased investment in the US. So I think that this will continue to increase. This trend will continue to solidify. And if we look at servers, we can see a very similar increase. At the very beginning, the red arrow is pointing to China, but then the green arrows are showing a diversification to other parts of the world, and then increased investment in the United States. So this represents the fact that the supply chains are adjusting to demand. This is a very clear trend, and this trend is continuing. In addition to semiconductors and servers, other industries are also beginning to focus on non-red supply chains because they are concerned with information security and economic security. The US and Taiwan are seeing increased opportunities, increased discussions on this front. The investment MOU focuses on two-way investment. So Taiwan has committed to invest $250 billion in the US, and at the same time, many US companies are also investing in Taiwan. So it's two-way investment. And the so-called non-red supply chains are also an important subject. Now we can see that this trend is also becoming more and more clear, and this is where Taiwan can really showcase its important role, because in addition to being non-red, Taiwan can also really beef up its supply chains, and only Taiwan is able to scale up in this way. And here we have various fields that you can see: semiconductors, AI, robots, bionic robots, satellite communications, B5G, and so forth. All of these fields are very important, and this is what we are emphasizing in our cooperation on supply chains. So I think that Taiwan can really play a critical role in developing these systems. And also, Taiwan has excellent manufacturing capacity when it comes to components. But we admit that when it comes to software or certain systems, we are quite behind the United States. So if we put our strengths together, then we can truly play a very important role and contribute to the entire world. And this is something that Taiwan and the United States should work together on. Last but not least, I would like to comment on these two photographs. On the left side, you can see on January 16th, this is the outcome of US-Taiwan negotiations. We published our investment treaty, the ART agreement, and on the right, you can see our ceremony yesterday at the State Department. This is the 6th EPPD when we launched the US-Taiwan Cooperation on Economic Security Dialogue.
At the Economic Prosperity Partnering Dialogue, we discussed a lot about how to have better supply chain collaboration, how to build non-red supply chain. We discussed a lot, and the meeting was very fruitful. From the first phase of relocation to the second to the third relocation of supply chain, many companies chose to do so because it was beneficial. It was for their companies. But for these two parts, this is laying a foundation because it sets a framework between governments. So building on this framework, Taiwan and the US can work closely together, and this is important for companies. Before we reached the conclusion in our tariff negotiations, many companies had great concerns about the future direction. But now that it has been concluded, looking into the next 5 to 10 years, Taiwanese businesses are definitely playing a critical role in building a non-red supply chain in the future, and we look forward to working with the U.S. in order to do so. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Now we'll transition to the stage
Okay,
for
okay.
the panel.
Okay.
Okay. Please. Please. As our panelists are coming to the stage, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Marcus Garlauskas. I am the director of the Indo-Pacific Security Initiative of the Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security, and I'll be moderating this panel discussion. So, Minister Kung, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and to share those very important thoughts with us. This is very timely, given that you were able to show us the pictures from yesterday. So this is really just a special honor. So before we go on, I'd like to introduce the other members of the panel who are joining us. Of course, you've already heard Minister Kung's bio. And so I'd like to introduce Jeanette Chu. She's the Vice President for National Security Policy and the Executive Director at the Alliance on National Security and Competition for the National Foreign Trade Council. She also has affiliations with CSIS, the Council on Foreign Relations, and over 3 decades of U.S. government service. So really an example of someone who's been a practitioner in government, a practitioner in the private sector, and also an expert in the nonprofit sector. And in a similar vein, we have Dak Hardwick, who's the Vice President of International Affairs at the Aerospace Industries Association. And he has experience also in government industry and non-government roles. And I want to remind you all in this session, of course, we've introduced the organizational affiliations here, but under the Atlantic Council's intellectual independence policy, none of the views you're about to hear represent those of the council or the individual organizations to allow us to have a free-flowing discussion. So with that, I would like to first begin with a question to each of the panelists in turn, and we'll start with Minister Gang. So by way of background, one of the things that I've learned first in my time as a strategist and intelligence officer in government, and then of course since I've been out of government leading work and research to inform decision makers, I've learned that it's not just enough to inform people, to inform decision makers, but it's also necessary sometimes to correct misconceptions. And so oftentimes the harder part is actually getting the incorrect understanding or ideas out, or the slightly off misperception, more so than just adding new information. And so I know that each of you have some ideas about where there may be misconceptions related to the issues that we discussed today. So I'd ask each of you briefly to just help set the stage for where is a top misunderstanding that we need to correct to better inform thinking and decision making on the issue set today. First to you, Minister Kang.
Thank you for your question. In my sharing earlier, you can see that in the past 10 years, Taiwan has been through US-China trade war 1.0, COVID-19, and reciprocal tariffs challenges. And Taiwan has been able to cope with these trade and economic challenges. But in the international arena, we have constantly heard that Taiwan has geopolitical risks. It is a very dangerous place. So you have to be very cautious when you invest in Taiwan. This is something that we heard constantly. Fortunately, if you look at the investment in Taiwan by US companies, they still invest in Taiwan, and they invest heavily in Taiwan. So I want to thank the partners, our friends in other countries, so that Taiwan's economy continues to grow. Yesterday, I visited a senator from Alaska, and he shared with me that in 1996, he was in U.S. Marine, and during the Vietnam War, he was on a warship, and he supported Taiwan back then. He continues to support Taiwan now. For us, we are not that concerned about the geopolitical challenges. We hope that we will continue to contribute to global economy, and we will do our best to get ready for that. For example, now, in terms of the AI era, we will continue to improve our production efficiency to contribute to the world. Thank you.
This misconception on Taiwan having unique geopolitical risk is an issue we've actually been studying quite a bit at the Council. And so I'm a moderator, not the panelist, so I won't give you a briefing on it. But I think this is really important, is that despite there are some unique challenges that Taiwan faces and its security, the whole region itself is so interconnected. There's no way to isolate the geopolitical risk that somehow something could happen that would just affect Taiwan that wouldn't have regional implications. And of course, there's many other risks in the region besides those that are facing Taiwan specifically. So I think that's a great issue to really build better understanding of. So Jeanette, what's your thought on what are we missing? What's the misconception out there that you'd like to correct?
Thank you so much, and my thanks to the Atlantic Council for hosting this very important dialogue, to Matt as well as to you, Marcus. It's an honor to be here with the Minister, who has already addressed one of the most important misconceptions I think that many people have about Taiwan, which is that Taiwan is just about semiconductors, when in fact it is a very, very robust and diverse global economic player. It has very important contributions to make in critical minerals, defense industries, which my friend Dak will address, biotech, as you've already said, advanced manufacturing, automotive, all over the spectrum. And I think with that, it's important to zoom out and think a little bit more about our misconceptions about economic security generally. It's a relatively new concept on the geopolitical stage, and we tend to think of it as, oh, this is something that is static or just one dimension, when in fact, just like Taiwan, economic security is very multifaceted and moving very quickly. It is a very dynamic environment that we are in. It will continue to be dynamic. Economic security, national and global security, will continue to be intertwined. We need to think about it in that broader context.
Thanks, Jeanette. That's a great point, and that broader context, I think, is really key. It's easy to oversimplify some of these issues when you focus on something specific like semiconductors. Important, but not everything. Dak, over to you. What would you like to clear up?
So, Marcus, first, let me echo what Jeanette said about my thanks to you and thanks to the Atlantic Council. From the Aerospace Industries Association, we represent America's aerospace and defense industry, both on the commercial side and on the defense side. And I think when you think about misconceptions for Taiwan, it's not just an outstanding semiconductor manufacturing nation. It's actually a nation that has outstanding capability for aerospace and defense manufacturing. It is a key supplying country to U.S. aerospace and defense products, both on the commercial side and on the defense side. But it also has this growing and emerging manufacturing base for commercial unmanned aerial systems. And when you look at the ecosystem between commercial, defense, and unmanned systems, it is a unique manufacturing capability in Taiwan. I like to tell people that aerospace and defense manufacturing is one of the most complicated manufacturing processes in the world. And there are only a few countries in the world that have the ability to manufacture aerospace and defense products and meet the requirements that you find. Taiwan is absolutely one of them, and it's continuing to grow its manufacturing capabilities to be not only a key regional player, but also a key global player in aerospace and defense manufacturing.
Dak, I appreciate that. Thanks. That's really helpful. And again, it's this idea that it's much broader, I think, than people realize, the U.S.-Taiwan relationship. All right, so I think that's a good place to start to clear up some of these misconceptions. But now let's go in a little bit more depth. And so, Jeanette, I'm going to turn to you first, and then you can actually cue this up, I think, for a response from the minister as well, is thinking more broadly, as you mentioned, about economic security and how that relates also even to resilience. How does this tie in with foreign investment? And so one of the things, of course, that we're looking at is, investment by Taiwan in the United States. But can you put this into a larger context, and perhaps, again, we can have Minister Kung add some additional thoughts from his perspective?
Happy to. And before I do, just echoing what Dak said, the National Foreign Trade Council had the honor of hosting the US-Taiwan Chamber of Commerce last year, where I learned for the first time that Taiwan's unmanned aerial systems supply chain included over 200 companies. And I was very struck by that, and it really made me want to learn much more about the diversity of Taiwan's industries. Minister, welcome again, and congratulations on what I hope will not be your first successful visit to the United States. With respect to the agreements that you signed just yesterday, how do you see Taiwan's investments in the U.S. as contributing to Taiwan's supply chain resilience? We tend to see things through a very U.S.-centric lens, and I'm interested in your lens on this. How will you know when these investments have been successful?
No? Yeah. Yeah, 谢谢.
Thank you, Jeanette, for your question. Let me just respond to your earlier comments. You mentioned our UAV, and I think Taiwan is unique in the sense that when a certain issue is important to countries around the world and companies start to invest in it, it is very fast for them to build up their capacity. About a year ago, the drone industry in Taiwan was not expected to build and meet the so-called non-red supply chain, because we have other players like DJI that dominated the global market. But now, as we have the demand for non-red supply chain within a year, just as you pointed out, over 200 companies have committed and invested in this industry. You have different defense industries, software companies. They are all part of this alliance, and within a year, they have received over $100 million worth of overseas orders. So this shows that Taiwan is unique in its capability and how it works with other countries. When it comes to investment, what counts as successful outbound investment? I think it all boils down to whether a company can create a value. Of course, for companies, they have to be able to make profits.
We try to look at the value created by the company, including in terms of employment opportunities and other areas, and whether we can connect the supply chain with Taiwanese supply chains, whether we can enhance this connection. So this is our goal. We are trying to create some beneficial cycles in terms of industrial supply chains.
All right, and so pivoting now to something a little bit more specific on drones and aerospace, Dak. I'd like to hear your thoughts, and again, after you give some comments, we can go to the minister with a question a little bit more about, particularly, I think, the drone supply chains and drone cooperation is such an area of interest these days.
So as we were preparing for the panel today, opportunity just to look at what Taiwan's drone exports start to look like, from the UAV exports start to look like. And one of the most interesting statistics was Taiwan's #1 export for unmanned systems is actually in Poland. Poland is importing Taiwanese unmanned systems to the exact point that the minister is making about having a non-red supply chain, transitioning off of Chinese-based supply chains and into non-red supply chains. So really a wonderful statistic there about how Taiwan's global reach is actually moving out of the Indo-Pacific and into Europe. Mr. Minister, I did want to ask about that, just drawing on that statistic about your exports and about how your government is going to continue to support the emerging commercial but also potentially defense drone industry, and what you need from your U.S. partners to continue to grow that both export opportunity but also the indigenous manufacturing you're trying to pursue.
Thank you for your question. Thank you. The role that our government can play is to create a platform and have very clear policy. So there are two parts to this. First, now Taiwan has some demand for drones in terms of defense. Some are for commercial use, some are for defense uses. So we do have some orders that go to the civilian industry. The civilian industry also has opportunities to place orders. And so this promotes private development. And on this basis, we then connect orders with buyers. Now, this is where the government can play a certain role, because in addition to supporting R&D, we also can create a platform for these over 200 companies that were just mentioned so that they can connect, and then we can connect them to other countries as well. So we can help foster connections with Europe and the US. We are signing many MOUs. That's something that the government can do. And in addition, it can promote international recognition and international certifications of these drones. So, for example, whether we're talking about civilian or non-civilian uses, if we have a mutually recognized system, this also helps promote the growth of the drone industry. Now, this is something that the government can truly help facilitate.
Minister, thank you, and thank you, Dak. So we are getting tight on time, but Minister, I'd like to ask you before we transition to our final question, if you could briefly share any thoughts that you have on energy and energy resilience, because that's a part of your portfolio we really haven't discussed much today. Just any quick thoughts for us.
是因为
Of course, energy is the foundation of economic development, and it's extremely important to development as a whole. So in the future, I think energy will become increasingly important because AI will only increase energy demand. So I think that there are two issues that we are saying. So do we have enough energy to support AI development? Of course, AI can also use some methods to try to save energy. But when it comes to supply chains and resilience, energy is something we must consider. When it comes to Taiwan, we are focused on ensuring that we have sufficient energy so that it can support our development. When we look at supply chain resilience, that's something that we also are trying to focus on, overseas supply chains reaching Taiwan. For example, the gas supply accounts for a relatively high proportion of our energy mix. So we may increase our imports of American gas, whether we are talking about mainland United States or possibly Alaska in the future. We will have a more diversified energy supply mix. Also, with the advent of new technologies, we will, for example, geothermal energy, we will also continue to develop these. So whether we're talking about safety or clean energy, Taiwan has been very active in these areas and will continue to do so.
Thank you, Minister. And this whole idea of increasing the liquid natural gas exports to Taiwan from the United States is something actually the Council has studied and written about. So that's a very important suggestion. So now we have just about enough time to do one more round. And the way that I would like to do this is in honor of the fact that the Atlantic Council is often called a think tank, but really more a do tank, an action tank. We like to focus on actionable recommendations. And so we'll first go to Jeanette and then to Dak for their recommendations to the minister, just again, briefly. And then, Minister, we'll go to you to give your final comments and any recommendations, requests that you have to the broader audience. They can be to the United States, to private sector, or to other allies and partners, because we do have a truly global audience here at the Atlantic Council. And then we can wrap up the session. All right, so first we'll go to you, Jeanette.
Thank you. So the National Foreign Trade Council does represent almost 200 U.S. headquartered domiciled companies, and I have learned this from them. Companies, and Taiwan especially, is a leading example, remarkable really, of being an economic success story. And part of this is because of your ability to really foster and maintain robust relationships around the world. However, conventional wisdom is going to tell you, you're doing great, keep on keeping on. What I've learned from our member companies is that the ones that are most successful keep on keeping on, but they also maintain vigilance. They are always looking to see, in a very turbulent environment, which disruptions actually are true inflection points. How do you see and respond to danger on the horizon? How do you keep from becoming complacent? So less of a recommendation, perhaps more just a word of caution to take a leaf from that, to always maintain vigilance even as you continue your remarkable success story.
Jeanette, thanks. I think that's a great recommendation. I love the fact that you use the words inflection points. You may not be aware, actually, that's a very popular phrase in the Atlantic Council and is actually the title of our CEO and President Fred Kemp's regular column. So you really hit the nail on the head there. So Dak, over to you.
Mr. Minister, I represent the American aerospace and defense industry, and what I have to tell people is we are, for good reason, one of the most heavily regulated industries in the world, both for commercial aviation safety as well as for the parts and components and the platforms that we make on the military side. So at the Aerospace Industries Association, we deal a lot with the American regulatory environment. So when Marcus asked us to provide you some advice as you were stepping into some additional opportunities for Taiwan, the advice that I would probably give is be very cautious of your regulatory environment. One of the things that I have to remind all of my friends, both on the government side and the industry side, is that the demand to the U.S. industry right now is speed. We want, the speed is necessary in order to achieve the objectives that we want to achieve. And what I have to remind everybody is that simple leads to speed. If you make it complicated, it will by its very nature slow down. And so what we want to do is ensure a regulatory environment that allows for the speed that's being asked of by the U.S. aerospace and defense industry, but frankly, by our partners all around the world. So as you look at your regulatory environment and you start to ask yourself, is that a regulatory need for us in order to drive something? Just take a very sharp eye to what that regulation may be. And I think the basic question that you ask is, does it increase the speed for the capability that we need, or does it decrease the speed for the capability that we need? That's the lens by which to do some decision making. But Marcus and to the Atlantic Council, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I very much appreciate that.
Dak, thank you. Simplicity and speed. I love it. That's very, very appropriate. All right. So, Mr. Minister, we'll go to you for your final thoughts on recommendations, requests that you have. The top ones for, again, U.S., the broader audience, and even for the private sector.
Thank you. I don't really have any requests, but I just wanted to thank you. I wanted to particularly thank the Atlantic Council for creating this platform that allows us to share an authentic voice from Taiwan, so that more people can learn about Taiwan. Now, we face many challenges, many unique challenges, especially in terms of politics. And so there are a lot of misconceptions on certain pieces of information. Now, thanks to platforms like the Atlantic Council and many, many people who support Taiwan are helping Taiwan to share accurate information. Taiwan will be very serious when approaching its role. For example, when it comes to supply chains, we will do our very best. And we will prevent supply chain disruption. When I visited Europe, many European friends told me that 10 years ago, they never understood the importance of supply chain resilience. But after the US-China trade war 1.0 and after COVID-19, they learned a lot more about it. And now after the critical earth metals and the Nexperia situation, our supply chains, they've realized that supply chains can be disrupted by certain countries. And so we will prepare for this type of situation. I also wanted to thank many people, many friends of Taiwan who are supporting Taiwan's development. But the most important thing that I would like to say is that if the opportunity arises, I would like to invite all of you here to come visit Taiwan. Taiwan is an extremely safe place for you to come visit. It's an amazing country. We have great food. It's very safe. And this will really help you gain a better understanding of Taiwan. You can learn more about our industry. You can come to Taipei. You can learn about components that are being manufactured very close to Taipei, in Hsinchu, which is 100 kilometers from Taipei. So please come visit Taiwan. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Minister, if I can pull out of that, I think there is both a request and a recommendation. I think the request to everyone is to seek accurate information and to empower platforms to get the word out from Taiwan, the truth about the situation. And then the request is to come visit Taiwan, apparently. Thank you so much to all of our panelists and particularly Minister for taking the trip. I'm glad it worked out with the weather. So as we say in the Indo-Pacific Security Initiative, this may be the end of today's discussion, but it's not the end of the larger strategic conversation with the Atlantic Council and the Scowcroft Center. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to seeing you all at future events related to Taiwan, and we hope to have you all back. Thank you very much.